3 days before my brother's wedding, I got a notification. $12,300 charged to my account. Catering, chairs, tent. When I asked, he said, "You're basically just the wallet in this family. Don't act surprised." His fiancée laughed. I just smiled and said, "Good luck with the weather." That night, I canceled everything. And when they found out about it, then I didn't expect they'd actually go that far. I knew about the wedding, obviously. I'd gotten to save the date. I'd sat through dinner where Danielle talked about floral arrangements for 45 minutes straight. And I'd even helped Ryan put together a guest list Excel sheet when his laptop crashed. I knew they were stressed. I knew they were tight on money, but I figured, or maybe just hoped, that they were handling it themselves, that if anything, they'd scale things back, get married at the courthouse, have a backyard cookout, whatever normal people do when they can't afford a $30,000 fantasy. I didn't expect them to use my account. Not like that. Last year, when my mom had a serious health scare, my dad pushed the idea of a shared emergency fund, something all four of us could access in a pinch. It didn't seem like a huge deal at the time. I set it up as a sub-account linked to mine with limited funds and transaction limits. They knew the credentials, but I kept it low-key. I didn't think they'd ever abuse it. That was my mistake. That account wasn't meant to be a wedding fund. It was for hospital bills, sudden repairs, maybe someone losing a job. I trusted them with it. So, when I got the notification, $12,300 charged, I thought it was a scam. I was at the grocery store grabbing a few things. I pulled my phone out thinking maybe it was a typo, but the charge was real. Event rental company with notes, catering, chairs, tent. I froze in the middle of the produce aisle. I called the bank. It wasn't fraud. Someone had logged in and used the account directly. That's when it clicked. It was Ryan. I didn't text. I didn't call. I drove straight to his place. He opened the door like he'd been expecting me. Danielle was there, too, on the couch in a silk robe, drinking from a wine glass and browsing what looked like a wedding seating chart. The vibe was casual. Way too casual considering they just stolen 12 grand from me. I asked if they used my account. Ryan said, "Yeah, of course." Then he said, "You're basically just the wallet in this family. Don't act surprised." I stood there for a few seconds waiting for some kind of punchline. It didn't come. Danielle laughed. Not uncomfortably. Not in a oops kind of way. She laughed like I was the dumb one for even questioning it. I smiled. That part was real. It wasn't a nice smile, but it was real. And I said, "Good luck with the weather." That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat at my laptop canceling every single reservation, the tent rental, the table setup, the catering, the music equipment. Every item listed in the charge got a call and every company confirmed, "Yes, we can cancel. Yes, full refund. Yes, we'll let them know." I didn't warn anyone. I just erased the wedding from existence. The next morning, my phone started blowing up. First, it was my mom. A long voicemail saying there was a problem with the bookings. Then another one. Then she started texting in all caps. My dad called 6 times. The 6th one he just said, "Fix this now." By 10 a.m. Ryan was banging on my door. He didn't even sit down. He said I had to call everyone back and repay them. That they'd already invited people, and if we didn't pay again by the end of the day, the wedding was off. He sounded more panicked than angry, like he couldn't believe I had really gone through with it. I asked him the obvious. Why would you plan a wedding you can't afford? He looked at me like I was the crazy one. He said they assumed I'd take care of it. Because I always do. Because I make the most. Because I don't have kids. Because I'm just the wallet. I told him no. Not this time. I wasn't going to be guilt or dragged into their fantasy life. I reminded him this wasn't a gift. It was theft. He didn't say another word. He just walked out. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Not even close. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was melting. 16 missed calls, 43 text messages. I didn't even look at them at first. I already knew what they were about. My mom had called first twice, then my dad, then Ryan, then Danielle, even a couple cousins I hadn't spoken to in over a year. The text started civil, like maybe this was all a misunderstanding. But by message number 10, the tone shifted. I was immature, vindictive, unbelievable. One message from my dad actually read, "This is a family milestone. You just burned it to the ground." I poured a coffee and sat down at my laptop. My inbox looked worse than my phone. Subject lines like urgent tent cancellation, contract reversal, catering, final payment requests. Apparently, Ryan had listed my email as the point of contact on nearly everything. I got messages from the venue coordinator, a DJ named Marco, and even a woman who was supposed to be making chocolate-dipped strawberries, each one asking where their payment went and if the event was still happening. That's when I realized how deep this went. They didn't just swipe a little from the account. They built the entire wedding on it. Every reservation, every down payment, every plan they made was with my money. No intention of asking, no backup plan if I pulled the plug. Just a blind assumption that I'd handle it because I always do. Around noon, my phone rang again. I answered out of curiosity. It was a number I didn't recognize. Danielle's dad. He didn't even introduce himself. He just launched into it. He said he'd heard I jeopardized everything and that it was deeply disappointing to see family act this way. He said Danielle was heartbroken. Her mom was in tears and guests had already booked hotels and flights. Then he asked me if I understood the financial and emotional damage I'd caused. I told him I understood just fine and that I hadn't caused anything. I just corrected a theft. He didn't like that. He asked if I had any idea how much weddings cost. I told him that was exactly why they should have figured out how to pay for their own. Then I hung up. At 2:47 p.m., a new group chat was created. Family Wedding Emergency. It was me, my parents, Ryan, Danielle, and to my absolute disbelief, Danielle's parents. My mom wrote, "We need to fix this immediately. This isn't just your brother's day. It's all of ours." I left the chat. I drove to the bank and told them I wanted everything locked. The emergency account closed, all access revoked, all cards shredded. I changed my login, updated my 2FA, even adjusted my email alerts. I went full lockdown. I wasn't going to let them take another cent. Then I remembered the shared credit card my parents used occasionally for groceries and small things and called to kill that, too. It had a $500 limit, but I was done playing the nice guy. I got home to 3 more voicemails, including one from Ryan. His voice was tight, like he was trying not to lose it. He said I needed to call the vendors and reinstate everything. That the only way to save the wedding now was to pay again up front by the end of the day. Otherwise, everything would be lost. He said I was embarrassing the entire family. I didn't answer. I didn't reply. I sat in silence for a while, just thinking about how they had twisted this. That evening, he showed up at my place. I forgot he still had a spare key. He walked in like he owned the place, pacing back and forth. Said Danielle hadn't stopped crying since the morning, that her parents were furious, that guests were asking questions, that everything was about to fall apart. I didn't say anything. I just let him vent. Finally, I asked the question that had been sitting in my head since the first notification. Why did you think this was okay? He didn't hesitate. He said, "We thought you'd just handle it. You make more than all of us. You don't even have a family. You always take care of stuff. We didn't think you'd say no." There it was. Not even shame. Just a bland sense of entitlement. Like the idea of me saying no had never even entered their heads. I told him that if he couldn't pay for a wedding, he shouldn't be having one. He didn't respond. Just stood there for a second, looking at me like I was the one being cruel. Then he turned and left. I thought that would be the worst of it. But I was wrong. The next day, things got worse because now they wanted something even more insane. The next morning started with silence. No calls, no texts, no emails. It was almost unsettling. After the last 2 days of full-blown meltdown, I figured they'd finally given up. Maybe they'd realized they went too far. Maybe they were regrouping. I should have known better. At 9:12 a.m., my mom showed up at my place. She didn't call ahead. She just knocked, walked in, and went straight to the point. She said she and my dad had just come from a meeting with Danielle's parents. They'd put their heads together and come up with a solution. She handed me a printed sheet of paper. It was a breakdown of costs, a trimmed-down version of the wedding, different venue, cheaper caterer, no live band. Total came to just under $14,000. Then she said, "This is the compromise. You pay this and everything goes back to normal." I stared at her. Not an apology, not a hint of recognition that they'd done anything wrong, just a new invoice. I asked her if she really expected me to fund it after everything. She said I didn't understand the pressure Ryan and Danielle were under. That canceling now would be humiliating, that I needed to stop being so rigid and think about the family. I told her I wasn't paying another cent, not a dollar. That's when she said the quiet part out loud. "If this wedding doesn't happen, it's on you." After she left, I sat there for a while just thinking, not even angry, just stunned. They really thought this was normal. Like there was some invisible clause in our family contract that made me financially responsible for everyone's dreams. A few hours later, I got a call from Danielle's mom. This time I answered. I wanted to hear what kind of logic they were running with now. She didn't even say hello. She said, "You're ruining my daughter's life." I asked her if she knew they used my account without permission. She said, "It doesn't matter. What matters is fixing it." That's when it hit me. None of them thought it was wrong. They just thought it was inconvenient that I found out and stopped it. They weren't sorry. They were angry they got caught. And now the entire wedding plan was collapsing and they needed someone to blame. They picked me. At 4:38 p.m., my dad called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. He said Ryan and Danielle were devastated. He said the family was falling apart. Then he said something that really got to me. "You've always been the one we could count on. Don't make this the moment you stop." I asked him if he understood they'd stolen from me. He paused, then said, "They just needed help. It's not like they took it for themselves." I told him that's exactly what they did. That night, I logged into my utilities dashboard. Over the years, I'd helped my parents with a lot of their bills. Little things, gas, internet, the occasional car repair. I'd set up autopay on their electric and water years ago when they were struggling. It didn't feel like a big deal back then. It did now. I canceled everything. Every payment linked to my account. I cleared out their saved info. Then I checked the shared Spotify and Netflix accounts and shut those down too. Petty, maybe, but I was done being the family's quiet little benefactor. I didn't announce it. I just flipped the switch. The next morning, the real storm hit. I expected fallout. What I didn't expect was to wake up to 4 envelopes shoved into my mailbox. All sealed, all handwritten with the same stiff block letters. Inside each one was a letter. Not emails, not texts. Letters. Like this was the 1950s and someone had died. They'd written them together. I recognized my mom's overly formal phrasing and my dad's guilt-heavy word choices. For pages of scolding, rationalizing, and low-grade emotional blackmail. They called me unstable, spiteful, and ungrateful. Said I was letting bitterness consume me. My dad actually wrote, "Real men don't let money come between blood." The last paragraph was the kicker. "We forgive you for your outburst. We're offering you a second chance to make this right and show that you still care about your family." I folded the letter, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it directly into the trash. Then I logged into every financial account I had and started combing through old transactions. That's when I found something I hadn't seen before. A withdrawal from the trust fund my grandmother had left for me in Ryan. It wasn't huge, just under $1,800. But I knew I didn't authorize it. The note said, "Medical reimbursement, dated 4 months ago." Back then, Mom had said she needed help paying for prescriptions. I hadn't asked questions. I should have. It took 2 phone calls to confirm that the money hadn't gone to a pharmacy or hospital. It went to a deposit for the wedding photographer. I called the photographer myself. He remembered the payment and said Danielle made it. Used my last name and everything. They'd been draining me for months. Quietly, carefully, one lie at a time. I didn't call anyone. I didn't need to. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from our office receptionist. "Hey, there's a woman here asking for you. Says she's your sister-in-law." I walked to the front just in time to see Danielle getting politely escorted out by building security. She saw me. She didn't say a word, just stared at me like I was some unfeeling monster. I walked away without a word. Everyone at the office pretended not to notice, but I saw the glances. One guy near the break room whispered, "What the hell is going on with Ethan?" That evening, Danielle left a voicemail. She sounded broken, but there was venom under the surface. She said she didn't care about the wedding anymore, said the damage was done. Then she said something that caught me off guard. "We've lost everything. I hope you feel powerful." I didn't. I felt sick. Around 9:30 p.m., Ryan called for the first time in days. He wasn't yelling. He was calm. Too calm. He said they decided to cancel the big wedding. Said they didn't want to drag this out. Then he said, "We're thinking of flying to Greece. Santorini, something small, romantic, just us. You'd only need to cover the travel and hotel." I asked, "How much?" He said, "About $6,000 should cover everything." I laughed and I think he took it as a yes. I hung up without another word. The next morning, I found out Danielle had posted something. Her Instagram story was a 3-part saga. First, a picture of her in her wedding dress. Then, a quote slide. "Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who destroy everything." The third story was a boomerang of her holding a wine glass, captioned, "Still going to have my day, even if fake family can't handle it." The comments were everything you'd expect. Crying emojis. "You deserve better." One girl even wrote, "Whoever did this to you deserves to rot." I took a screenshot of everything and texted it to Ryan. I told him if she didn't take it down, I'd start telling people the truth. He didn't reply for 2 hours. When he did, it was one word: coward. That night, I realized something I should have accepted a long time ago. There was no reasoning with him. No line they wouldn't cross. No limit to their self-absorption. They would keep coming until I made it absolutely undeniably clear. I was done. The next day, I made my final move. I woke up early the next morning and didn't touch my phone. I didn't check messages, didn't open my email, didn't look at any notifications. I already knew what would be waiting. I had other plans. First, I called the trust fund manager and froze all remaining funds with immediate effect. Then, I asked him to file a note that only I could authorize any future withdrawals. No more loopholes, no more favors. Took less than 10 minutes. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I met with a lawyer not to sue anyone. Not yet anyway, but to document everything. I gave him every screenshot, every text, the receipts, the account access logs, the wedding invoices, the photographer confirmation, and even Danielle's social media posts just in case, because I had a sick feeling this wasn't over, and I wanted to be ready if things went sideways. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called HR. I told them I wanted to officially remove my parents and brother from the emergency contact list. While I was at it, I updated my address and locked down my employee benefit account. I didn't want anyone calling and pretending to be me to get access to anything. By 3:00 p.m., the messages started again. Ryan first. He sent me a photo of the two of them standing in front of a travel agency holding brochures for Greece. The caption was, "One last chance to do the right thing, bro." I didn't answer. By 6 p.m., my dad called again. I let it go to voicemail. He said he was deeply disappointed and that my behavior was so far out of character it bordered on concerning. He said I needed to come over and talk it out. And then just before hanging up, he slipped in a threat. "If you let this wedding fall apart, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." That's when I knew something else was coming. I just didn't know what. At 9:17 p.m., I got an email from my landlord. Apparently, someone had called and claimed there were suspicious activities at my apartment. Anonymous tip. The kind of thing that makes your landlord nervous enough to check security cameras and ask questions. I have no proof it was them, but I don't need it. No one else in my life would go that low that fast. The next day was supposed to be the wedding, or what was left of it. I heard nothing all morning. No messages, no updates, no signs of life. Around 2 p.m. my phone rang. It was my cousin Sarah. She was supposed to be at the wedding. I answered. She was whispering, trying not to be heard. She told me guests had started arriving to an empty venue. There was no setup, no chairs, no food, nothing. Danielle's parents were outside yelling at the staff, demanding answers. Ryan wasn't there. Neither was Danielle. Apparently, Danielle had told everyone the wedding was still happening. She kept pretending everything was on track. Never canceled the invitations. Never told anyone the truth. Sarah said some people were furious. One aunt flew in from Colorado. Another cousin drove 6 hours. They booked hotels, taken time off work, bought gifts, and then mid-chaos, Danielle showed up wearing her wedding dress. Alone, she got out of the car, saw the empty venue, and started screaming at the top of her lungs. Sarah said Danielle actually threw her bouquet at the building's locked doors. The guests watched in silence. Some laughed. Others just walked back to their cars. I asked Sarah if Ryan ever showed up. He didn't. Later that night, I found out why. Because while Danielle was staging a breakdown in a parking lot, Ryan was on a flight, not to Santorini, to Miami with one of his coworkers, a girl named Alina. The same girl Danielle accused him of flirting with 6 months ago. Danielle posted a tear-stained selfie to Instagram at 10:04 p.m. captioned, "I was never the problem." Comments flooded in. Sympathy, outrage, some people blaming me, others blaming Ryan. A few blaming toxic masculinity. Whatever that meant. No one knew the truth. Not really. And for the first time, I didn't care. The only people I called were my bank and my internet provider. I canceled the last few accounts they had access to. Changed everything. Passwords, addresses, phone numbers, set up mail forwarding because the next day I was leaving. I left before sunrise. No note, no goodbye. I didn't tell a soul where I was going. I'd already signed a short-term lease on a small apartment 2 states over. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, plain kitchen, no view, but it was quiet. It was mine and no one knew the address. Packing took less than a day. Most of my stuff I donated or left behind. I took my laptop, a few boxes, and a suitcase. The rest wasn't worth holding on to, especially not in a city that now felt like one giant mistake. I left the spare key to my old place in a drawer and locked the door behind me for good. That drive out of town felt surreal. The streets looked the same, the signs, the stores, but everything felt hollow, like the place had been drained of color. I kept thinking about Ryan and Danielle, about the wedding that never happened. The Instagram breakdown, the lies, the way everyone had just expected me to accept it. But what stuck the most was how none of them ever apologized. Not once, not even when it all collapsed. Not when Ryan vanished to Miami. Not when Danielle was screaming in a parking lot. Not when guests were sitting on sidewalks with untouched wedding gifts on their laps. Not a single "I'm sorry." Instead, I got silence. And then a week after I left, I got a letter forwarded to my new address. Handwritten return label M. Sanders, my mom. Inside was a birthday card. Just a plain card. No glitter, no jokes, the kind you grab from a gas station. Inside she'd written, "Despite everything, you're still our son. We hope you come to your senses." No check, no apology, just guilt signed in cursive. I tossed it straight into the trash. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've started over. New apartment, new job, new bank, no shared accounts, no more being the wallet. I didn't give anyone my new number. I blocked half my family on social media. Ryan still hasn't reached out. Danielle's Instagram went dark. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents and blocked everyone who showed up to the failed wedding. My mom still tries to email sometimes. I don't read them. Just delete. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled it. If it was too much, if maybe I should have just paid and walked away clean. But here's the truth. They would have kept going. It wasn't about one wedding. It was never just about that. It was about how easy it had become for them to rely on me, to assume I'd always catch them when they jumped, no matter how reckless or entitled or blind they were. And I finally stopped catching them. The wedding never happened. Ryan never apologized. Danielle became an Instagram ghost, and I moved away without looking back. And I've never slept better.